What's up, y'all? I've been getting hit with this question a lot lately, and the question is, should I buy a home? The short answer is, yes, you should buy a home. Why? Because I sell homes, and that's how I make my commission. It's from you buying and from you using me to purchase your home. But I have a longer answer for you that'll really help you in your journey to buy a home. You wouldn't go to the dealership and ask the car salesman if you should buy that car, and you wouldn't go to Walmart and ask them if you should buy that jacket. So you shouldn't ask a real estate agent if you should buy that house. We make sales to feed our family, so it's counterintuitive for us to tell you not to make a purchase. But what I can do for you is give you some options so you can make your own decision whether you should purchase or not. These are some things you should consider. 1, how much can I afford anyway? So as you all remember, in 2021, when interest rates were very low, you could get a $400,000 house at 3% interest rate, 3.5% down. You could get that at that time for about $2,000. That same house now would be about $3,000 a month when you include that 7% interest rate and that same 3.5% down. So just like yesterday's price is not today's price, yesterday's interest is not today's interest. Those numbers that I just kicked out to you are based on a 30-year term, which is typical for most people. Anything less than that would cost you more per month, but on the back end it would cost you less because you would pay less interest. But I'm not going to get into that in this video. I just want to give you some insight on why you should or should not buy a home. In other words, unless you exponentially increase your income or decrease your expenses, you can no longer afford that house that you were looking at a couple years ago. You may have to consider downsizing to something that's around the range of about $275,000-$300,000. Another thing to consider is your credit score. So typically, a mortgage lender would entertain someone with a minimum of a 640 credit score. But just because you can get a loan doesn't mean you should get a loan. Remember, the lower your score, the higher your interest rate. The higher your score, the lower your interest rate. So I tell my clients to get somewhere close to a 700 as possible. So the rates that you see online are usually based on a 720 credit score, especially if you're looking at conventional loan rates. But I'm not a mortgage lender. I don't suggest you do anything, but I just want to give you the information. Many people don't even consider the other expenses that they'll have outside of their pity payment per month. And when I say pity payment, I mean your principal, your interest, your property taxes, and your homeowner's insurance. So how about sudden repairs, such as pipes bursting, especially when it gets cold? You're going to have leaks, you're going to have some pipes that burst, and you better hope that it's not under your foundation. And what about you people that like privacy fences? So if you have a wooden privacy fence, those things need to be treated every year. If not, they'll get real dark and dirty and they won't look so good. They'll start to fall apart. You have your yard work. If you like to cut grass, that's one thing. It's still work and it's still going to cost you time, but it'll cost you money if you want to pay somebody else to do it. And for those of you that like vinyl siding, be prepared to have to pressure wash your house at least once a year because that algae likes to grow on it and it doesn't look good. And so I advise that you go to your home improvement store, rent one of those pressure washers for about 4 hours, take care of the job instead of hiring somebody to do it. But if you're someone that doesn't like to get dirty, just hire someone to do it. But that is another expense, whether you have to rent it or not. And for those of you that would like to stay in an HOA community, meaning homeowners association community, you will have an extra fee every month for dues to pay towards that HOA. Not only that, they will make sure that you keep up with your property, that you won't let it fall apart like old Bert. Everybody knows old Bert from the country, that he has about 8 old Honda Civics in his yard that he's been meaning to work on since forever, and he got them parked all kind of ways. They're not having that. They kicking old Bert out. They don't want him in there because he's going to be bringing the other property values down. So that's something else to consider. Consider the HOA expense, and also consider that you will not be able to do what you want to do just because you purchased a home and you own it, so to speak. Another thing to consider is, do you plan on sitting for a while? Because if you have a government loan such as FHA, USDA, or VA loan, they require that you stay in your home for at least a year before you rent the home out. Now you can sell it, but I don't know if you want to do that because you'll either break even or you'll be in the hole. But you cannot rent it out until you've stayed in it for at least 1 year. So hopefully you don't have a job opportunity out of town or somewhere far from your home before you're able to rent it out. And also you should ask yourself, do you even want to become a landlord in the first place? Look, I know that people on the internet make it look sweet, right? Like they make it look like you're making all this money and that everything is good being a landlord and owning all this property and stuff like that. It has its upsides, and if you can get someone to manage those properties for you, that's awesome. But if you only have 1 or 2 homes, I promise you paying someone to manage those homes, it's not going to make any sense. It's going to take all of your profits. And so if you haven't been planning on doing that as a career thing, to own property and be a landlord and have tenants, then you will probably be more aggravated than, say, a person that's been set on doing that as a career. Ask any landlord that didn't receive any rent during the pandemic and there was nothing they can do about it. Even the government wouldn't help them. Imagine how much money was lost. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, but hey, it's just something to consider if you plan on purchasing a property. If you are one of those people that think that just because you purchase a home that you have no rules to follow, then you are dead wrong. I understand that you hated being at the apartment, you hated their rules and regulations, but you may even have more rules and regulations when you move into a home, especially if you're in an HOA or if you're in a community that has CCRs. What are CCRs? Conditions, covenants, and restrictions. And this is basically a big book with rules and regulations that you have to follow unless you have to go. Or they'll keep just finding you until your pockets burn up enough to where you're forced to leave anyway because you're tired of paying them. Also, not only that, you have city and county ordinances. So there are certain things that you can't do in the city or your county. So I know in some parts of Chatham County, you can't even park your car parallel to the street. You have to park it perpendicular like most driveways are. And they'll come and put that fine on your windshield real quick just for that alone. You can't park in the street in certain places because of the street sweeper. They'll fine you as well. So you can't have junk cars in certain places. If that car doesn't work, it has to go. Like you can't have cars sitting on top of bricks and things like that, like old Bert that I was telling y'all about earlier. You can't be like Bert. They will fine you. They will get you out of there. So these are some things to consider as well. Now, this is one that most people do not consider at all. And not only do they consider it, they really can't control it. And that is horrible neighbors. I don't care how much you scout a neighborhood and you check it out and you make sure that the schools are good. Like you're just checking everything. You can't really tell who's inside of these houses and what are they going to be like. Are they nosy? Do they hate children? Are they nitpicky about everything? Do they call the police for everything? Like, you never know what you're dealing with. Everybody's not going to bring you an apple pie as soon as you move in. I promise you. You're going to have some people that you don't really like and they're not going to like you. Just hope that person is not living right next to you. So what if you did purchase a home and then you have some neighbors move in and like they have some crazy people living there that's getting ready to start World War III? Like, what do you do then? I mean, you just purchased a home. And then especially if you have a government loan, you have to stay there for at least a year before you can rent it out. What are you going to do? These are some things that people don't consider. And that's actually something that you can't even control. Right? At least if you had an apartment, you can move. You might have to pay them a little bit more money before you can move out. But most of those lease agreements will allow you to leave as long as you pay a certain amount up front before you go. But you can't do that with a home that you just purchased. It's already purchased. You already signed the paperwork. What do you do in that situation? So that's something to consider. Okay, so I'm going to hit y'all with this last one. And that's, do you have enough money to close in the first place? So closing costs is typically 3 to 5% of the purchase price of the home that you're trying to buy. Okay, what is closing costs anyway? So I'm going to name a few things. You have 3 to 6 months of your property taxes that you have to pay. You have 3 to 6 months of your homeowner's insurance that you have to pay, and all this is going in escrow. You have your transfer costs, you have your intangible costs, you have loan origination fees, you have points if you're going to be buying discount points. Okay, like you also have your appraisal, which is not a part of closing costs. You have your inspection, which is not a part of closing costs that you have to pay out of pocket, right? And you have earnest money. Okay, so you have to have earnest money before you can even sign the contract. Before a deal can even be made, you're going to need earnest money, and that's about 1% of the purchase price. Okay, so if you don't even have closing costs, you can't make the deal at all. And like I said, you'll be surprised of how many people did not even know about closing costs. Now, if you're lucky, the seller will pay your closing costs for you, but in a hot market, you can forget it. The seller's not going to pay your closing costs. If you didn't get anything else out of this video, I want you to take this with you. Never ask a salesperson of any industry if you should purchase anything that they're selling. More than likely, they will say yes. Why? Because that's how they feed their families. So when people ask me, hey Fernando, should I purchase a property? The answer is yes. But with the little bit of information that I gave you in this video, now you can determine that for yourself. You don't need me to help you. You only need my help when you've made the decision to purchase. Also, if there's anyone out there that's looking to purchase a home within the next year, reach out to me, f.kittles.com. Send me a message. Also, you can go to my website, fernandokittles.com. Send me a message through that website. I'll be reaching out to you. Until the next one,